All right, welcome to episode 13 of the Tryon Show. This episode is available on YouTube, so if you're just listening, make sure to give the video a watch on the Tryon Show YouTube page. I'd like to thank True Grit Fitness for allowing us to use their conference room as a studio today. So give them a follow on Instagram. It's True Grit, TRUGRIT Fitness. My guest today is someone I've known for a long time. And on episode 1, when I said I wanted to bring regular people on the show who have extraordinary stories, this was pretty much one of my prime examples. It's a longtime friend, Lauren Lentz. I've known Lauren as Lauren Houchins growing up. Literally, we grew up pretty much in the same neighborhood. Just one street separated our little neighborhoods. And she went to school the same year as my brother, and I think I'm a year older than her younger sister. So we have a big extended circle of friends, from many years back. Quick note, Lauren's family was one of many families who were, very sweet and did more than the bare minimum as far as families and friends go Sorry, getting a little shook up here, even at the beginning. When you experience the loss that my family did when we lost my brother. My brother was 18 when he died in a car accident. And I'll just always remember Lauren's family for being a very special family. So I just wanted to give the whole Houchins crew a quick shout out before we get started here. But today, we are here to talk about Lauren. We're here to talk about her Instagram page, I'm Sorry We're Friends, and the purpose behind it, which is kind of how we've recently reconnected as friends, because the page and honestly, Lauren's vulnerability and strength behind the journey that she's been on since enduring a life-changing tragedy of her own has really spoken to me and inspired me. So here we are. Welcome, Lauren, to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I know it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while. So I really appreciate you continuing to reach out to me and accommodating to my schedule.
Definitely. Yeah, you have a crazy schedule.
Solo mom life with the 2-year-olds, that's for sure.
Yeah. So like I said, where do we even begin? Why don't we start by having you tell the watchers and listeners about what your life kind of looked like in between, because my knowledge of your life kind of stops at high school up until a few years ago. So why don't you fill the listeners into what your life was like before starting the I'm Sorry We're Friends page.
Yeah, so I graduated from Rancho Buena Vista High School, same year that your brother would have graduated, 2003. Went on, did the typical Miracosta for a couple years, went over to Cal State San Marcos and graduated with a degree in communications. And then I moved away to Santa Barbara with hopes and dreams of becoming the ultimate realtor. And I started taking classes up there, and I realized I was just burned out from school, 5 years of education. And my priority then, newly 21, was to be out and partying and making new friends. So
they don't party at UC Santa Barbara.
No, not at all, not at all. And I actually was a bartender, so that kind of added to the fun little mix up there. But yeah, lived up there for a couple years, 2.5 years. And then my sister was actually going through the teaching credential program down here at Cal State San Marcos, along with a couple other girlfriends. And we had all been talking, and I'm like, I got to move away. Like, either you're kind of stuck in that party life and you're in your early 20s there, or you're doing really well and you're super successful and you're in your 50s. There was really no middle ground in Santa Barbara at the time. Right. It's changing. But yeah, so I moved back home. I went backpacking with my sister and Christy, now Smith. She was Christy Gann, and a couple other people. We went to Australia, New Zealand.
Wow.
And when we were there, I was like, all these people are going to become teachers and it sounds legit. So I think I'm going to go back to school and become a teacher.
Awesome.
So left Santa Barbara, did the whole backpacking thing, came back, moved in with mom and dad, and then went and did this accelerated credential program. So that's a little bit about the in-between. And when I moved home from Santa Barbara, I was single, and I was 24, about to be 25, and all my friends were like, I have someone for you. Oh my gosh, I want to meet you to meet this person. And I'm like, you guys, I'm not really about it. But one of my girlfriends, Jen, she was adamant that she was going to have me meet her friend, and she was married at the time, and we had gotten together for drinks in Carlsbad. What is that place, that like Mexican place over by the ocean? I cannot think of it. Not Las Olas.
Nortes.
Yeah, Nortes. There we go. And she and I were having drinks, and she's like, do you care if my husband comes for happy hour? I'm like, no, it's no big deal. And in he walks with a guy, and I just look at her, and I'm like, I absolutely know what is happening right now.
Set me up.
But I wasn't mad at it, because I definitely, like, this instant that Kevin came walking through, he had this big smile, and he had all this energy, and I was like, all right, we'll see where this takes us. So introduction to Kevin coming into my life in about 2010.
Oh.
Yeah.
So from there, you met Kevin. What happened? You guys, obviously, you fell in love, and just give me a little snippet of that, where that took you from there.
Yeah. So I was playing a little hard to get for a while, for a couple months. We played the friend card, and he actually, surprisingly to those who know him, was shy. So he never came off to most as shy, but he was very shy. It took him over a month to ask for my phone number. So we did a lot of like friend things. And then finally one night he invited me to a like brewery tasting down in San Diego, or if it was a festival. And he'd had a couple beers, and lo and behold, decided he wanted to give me a kiss. And then we were on the train on the way back up, and he's like, I think I did this all backwards. I probably should have taken you on a date first and all those things. But yeah, so that's kind of how we hit it off. And after that, we fell pretty fast for one another, and were with each other just side by side every day. And he was a procrastinator, though, so it took him about 4 years to propose, even though from the beginning we were already talking about owning homes and getting married and having kids. And so he proposed in 2015, and then we didn't get married until like a year and a half later, in June 2016.
Nice.
So yeah, we got married, Leo Carrillo Ranch in Carlsbad. It was beautiful. And then fast forward a year later, and Lawson came into the world. So we had a little baby boy actually it was about a little over a year, 2018. So yeah.
2018. And
September 2018.
He just seems like, I mean, he's your life now, and a bundle of joy. But one thing I noticed, because I grew up with you, around you type of deal, I noticed that Kevin really got you into riding bikes. Tell us about that, because I knew you as Lauren, the cheerleader. Lauren, I mean, you were outside playing with the boys a lot. Not saying you weren't tough by any means, but I didn't think that I would grow up to see you doing gnarlier mountain bike rides or cycling rides than I've ever done. So tell us about how Kevin got you into that.
Yeah, so actually, I'll rewind, and Kevin was not a cyclist when I met him. Oh, wow. So Kevin grew up playing soccer. Okay. And then when we met, he actually, he's probably just rolling his eyes somewhere, but when we met, he was like 20 pounds heavier. He was living the good life of
craft beers.
Brewing beer. So he and his roommates like had their own little brewery in their house. They were brewing beer, eating food, and just kind of living it up. And so when we met, I was pretty physically fit at the time, but I was more like runner, hiker, that kind of thing. And so I was like, oh, let's get into this. And he's huffing and puffing up the hills, trying to keep up with me hiking. And then probably a couple months into our relationship, I introduced him to my parents. My dad and he are talking, and they start hitting it off about how when they were both kids, they were into dirt biking, and that Kevin had dirt bikes, my dad had dirt bikes, and my dad's like, oh man, if you dirt biked when you were a kid, like I have to get you on the mountain bike, because my dad had been riding cycling and mountain biking since I was in high school.
Okay.
So that's kind of where that comes in. And my dad takes Kevin out and at the time my dad was in his 50s.
Right.
And he takes Kevin out on his first mountain bike ride, Lake Calaveras in Carlsbad, and kicks my dad kicks Kevin's ass. And Kevin was so upset. And he came home and he's like, dude, a bunch of men and women in their 50s just stomped on me. I ended up throwing up. No, this is not okay. And he was super competitive by nature. So he was like, I'm quitting the bad eating and all the bad habits. And I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And he really did, like cold turkey, everything, like started eating healthy, started drinking way less, riding with my dad. Became a monster.
Yeah, I was gonna say the photos I've seen of the guy, he was in really good shape.
Really good shape.
Like
Yeah, he dropped like 25, 30 pounds after just a couple months. But he that competitive nature kind of brought him into this world where like now all his focus was on mountain biking. And then some friends that he would ride with on the mountain bike were like, oh, we got to get you on the road. And so he started riding the road. He became a member of Cello Pacific at the time, and they're a group out of Carlsbad that rides, and he started racing. And he did really, really well. But the road was never really where his heart was at. So even though he would ride on the weekends, the mountain biking and the dirt was what really spoke to him. So he stopped racing the road. And he started racing mountain bikes, I think, in 2016. But back to your original question about how did I get involved in all this, once I finished the teaching credential program, when I was in the teaching credential program, I was like, good riddance, have a fun weekend because I have studying to do, no problem. When I'm done, all of a sudden I'm like, wait, you ride for 5 or 6 hours on a Saturday. This isn't fun. Right. Now I'm waiting for you and you just did 100 miles on your bike and you're exhausted and you don't want to do anything. So it was kind of like, can't beat them, join them. Yeah. So I started riding on the road first and I joined a group called Team Fun, and it was a bunch of girls. And then we actually joined in with a more well-known team called Swamis. Okay. And so I started riding with Swamis. I never raced. And I actually never mountain biked when Kevin was alive. So he took me one time. I hated it. And we did not get along because he was downhill technical and I'm hike a bike, super pissed off that I'm even doing this. And so, the mountain bike piece came after he was killed.
So... Okay, which leads me to what I was going to ask you next, which is tough. But what happened to Kevin? You're now speaking of him in past tense, and I was trying not to, because I didn't know how to bring it up. But we're here to talk about your life, and that's a huge part of it. So why don't you tell us what happened to Kevin?
Yeah, and I'm an open book. So for me, I think it's so important to be able to save space for people who do feel uncomfortable to ask, right? And that's something.
And sorry, but it's crazy because I'm one of the people that feels comfortable asking, and even feeling comfortable is still uncomfortable, you know? So let that be a little snippet for you people out there who wonder, it is hard to bring it up, even if you're used to bringing stuff up. So don't be scared to bring stuff up to a friend like Lauren or myself. But anyways.
Thank you, Yeah, so like I mentioned, Kevin started racing for a company called Tasco Mountain Bikes. They're an apparel company, but there's this little app on your phone called Strava that people are probably pretty well aware of these days. And before Kevin started racing for Tasco, one of the guys from Tasco put on this Strava competition called the Tour of Dirt. And Kevin was obviously all in. Yeah. And I think it was I can't remember if it was a week or a month long. I don't remember. But it was a competition between the best of the best on Strava. And they would race all these segments. And then they were going to meet up at a brewery at the end of this. I think it was a month. At the end of this month time to basically be rewarded or awarded for second, third place. And so a lot of people in the racing community didn't know Kevin that well until this. Okay. And when he's getting the king of the mountain
Right.
and he's just dominating, and he and the other two guys are like going back and forth
Right.
and winning all these different segments. And so that was like, oh, okay, this guy is really fast.
Yeah, it put
And
his name on the map.
Put his name on
Yeah.
the map. And so they did this tour of the dirt. And after the tour of the dirt, our now friend, Mark, we did not know Mark well at the time. He was going to be running the Tasco mountain bike racing team. And he asked Kevin if Kevin would want to race for the team. And Kevin was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So long story short, he raced for them 2016, 2017, took a break 2018, 19 when we had Lawson.
Right.
But really wanted to get back into it again. And so...
And they wanted him back.
Yeah, absolutely.
They needed those top
absolutely.
times.
Yeah. So, and he just enjoyed it more than anything. He just loved to be out there. But so towards the end of 2019, he'd asked, like, is it okay if I start riding back out with the guys more often on the weekends and getting race ready for 2020? And I was like, yeah, sure. So November 23rd, 2019, he and his friend Mark met up at our house, and they rode on their mountain bikes, but on the road to Daly Ranch in Escondido, where they were going to meet up with a lot more of their teammates to start riding and practicing. They got out there, they rode, had a beautiful day, and on the way out of the park to ride home, Kevin and his friend Jill's they decided to stop. There were, I think, 7 of them. And they decided they were going to stop and have a snack break. Kevin loved his snacks. And so the other guy said, okay, we'll meet you at the bottom of the hill in a few minutes when you're done with your snacks. And so they had their little Belgian waffle snack, and they were riding down. And if you know Daly Ranch well at all, I wasn't familiar with Daly Ranch before this. It's a 2-lane road, and the side that Kevin was going down is extremely narrow. And there are no bike lanes. So he was riding in the middle of the road like you would normally do if you trying to stay safe with people behind you so they can see you. And he was going around a blind curve, and a man who we assume was intoxicated on alcohol and drugs was driving triple the speed limit on the wrong side of the road around a blind curve at, I think, over 60 miles an hour. Kevin had nowhere to go. He hit him head on, killing him instantly. And we didn't even know. I didn't know for hours that this had even occurred because the man fled. It became a crime scene. There were so many legalities to it all that all I had was my phone and being able to look at our GPS that we had on one another and to know that he was there and he was in the same spot, but I didn't really know why. And I just automatically assumed he's being a punk. He knows he's supposed to be home at 12, but he's having a beer with friends and he's like not answering the phone because he knows that he's supposed to be at home at 12. And then I was able to get, by 3 o'clock, I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
I could feel it. And I was able to get the phone number of a friend that he was riding with, and I called him, and he didn't have my phone number, so he answered the phone like, hello,
Yeah.
And I said, hey, it's Kevin's wife, Lauren, where are you guys? And he was just silent, and I just dropped to my knees, and I knew something terribly wrong had happened, and he said, are you with anyone?
That's when,
and
that's
that
when
was it.
Really hit you.
Yeah, because if he had just been injured, I had known that they would have said, "Hey, Kevin got hurt.
Everything's fine. He broke his leg."
Yep. Shit. Yeah. So I instantly hung up on him actually, and I called my mom screaming, and I just said, "I know Kevin's dead." And they were also shocked because they're not expecting a phone call like this, and they're doing things in the middle of the day, and in what seemed like hours, which was probably minutes, my sister was there and our friend Mark, who was with Kevin, and my parents. And just to receive that news, I know you know it. It's just
it's not
the most painful. And I think everyone's experience is so different, but for me, it was so out of body. Like I was numb. And I couldn't even, when he was telling me this story and he was telling me what happened, it was like I wasn't even there. It was just somewhere completely different. And
I can relate to that. I felt the same way for many days. Like, you could tell me whatever you want to tell me, but my body's here, but I'm somewhere else.
No. Yeah, you don't know the day, the time. And at the time, Lawson was only 14 months old. And he was still being breastfed, and he was just
baby.
He was a baby. Yeah. And I remember the next day, my mom saying like, "Hey, what time is Lawson supposed to get?" And I was like, "What day is it? What time is it?" And I was so grateful that people were there to kind of manage that for me, because there was no like, I just couldn't sync with reality. And I was like that for a few weeks, probably, where you're just like going through the motions in 100% survival mode.
Yeah, and all the while still raising your son, and he's like looking at you, "Mom, I need to eat," or whatever. So that's where everyone else kind of...
And he knew that there was something terribly wrong.
Yeah.
He instantly went into a sleep regression, would wake up every hour, every 2 hours. He'd ask for me. He didn't want me to leave. He knew Daddy wasn't coming back in the house, and he's constantly like searching for things of his truck, his clothes, his garage, all those kind of things. And it was hard because he couldn't speak. I mean, he knew very little vocabulary at the time. And so everyone that I would talk to would say like, "Well, you just need to help yourself to help him." And I was like, "But I need to help him." You could just see it. You could see the grief and the pain on this little 14-month-old face.
Yeah. It's so hard for me to imagine, because I, A, don't have kids, B, I'm not a child expert, but like a 14-month-old is still developing, learning. Like you said, you're teaching him words, and then to also have to see that person learn grief or loss at the same time is a tremendous thing to even have to take on. So I give you nothing but respect, and my God, you are tough. And I know we both have heard that many times, but so since then, the reason I brought you here is not, we don't want to talk about sad stuff and be sad the whole time, but we need to hear your story, and we want to honor Kevin. But I think the coolest thing that you're doing to honor him is why I brought you here today, is to talk about your page, the I'm Sorry We're Friends page. Yeah. And the worst thing that a person could be dealt is loss in their life, especially one that you never expected, and especially your husband and the father of your child. It's insane. I mean, I watched my parents lose their son, and I lost a brother, and you don't wish it upon anyone, no matter what. I mean, nobody would. But to see what you've done in a short amount of time, you said he passed away November 23rd, 2019. So literally, in a very short amount of time, you've created a community of, I'll let you talk about it, but from what I can see, it's a community of people who maybe felt like I felt for the first 5 years after losing my brother. Like, nobody would want to hear me talk about it. Nobody would understand it, so I'm just going to keep to myself.
Right.
And then you have created a platform for people to come and feel comfortable who are grieving, not only widows, but maybe they lost a boyfriend or girlfriend, or just anyone. Like, I can relate to your page. So why don't you tell us about how you pivoted from being dealt such a shitstorm and turning it into what you've turned it into while you're also dealing with your own grief.
Thank you. Yeah, so 2 days after Kevin was killed. So Kevin was killed right before his favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. 2 days after he was killed, I had 2 random numbers text me, and they were both widows.
Wow.
Ashley Iverson, whose husband was a CAL FIRE firefighter, and he was killed in a fire the year previous. I think it was the year previous. And then Shanna Kriza, whose husband was a fire captain who was hit and killed by a drunk driver on his mountain bike as well. So they both reached out to me within 2 days, and they were like, "We know this despair. Like, we know this suffering. This is year 1. This is day 3 for you. This is what it's going to look like. Like, you're going to be inundated by people, but you're not even going to be there. You're not even going to remember these days coming forward. You're not going to remember that first Thanksgiving without him, all these things, right?" So here they are, and they're just already feeding life into me, because I was in so much physical anguish. Like, I didn't even know that was possible, that your emotional pain could somehow take over your body.
Absolutely.
And I remember my mom sleeping next to me that morning that I got these text messages, and turning and thinking it was going to be Kevin, and it was my mom. And I told my mom, I said, I genuinely, I'm not going to survive. Like, I literally feel like my heart is going to stop. Yeah. And it's not that I don't want to survive. Like, I just don't think that I can. And so hearing from these women who were saying they had survived a year,
and they were a year
out, and they were complete strangers. Yeah. I was like, oh, the life vest. It's like, I need this so desperately. And I remember saying to Ashley, like, does it always hurt this badly? Like, am I always going to feel this tremendous ache? And she's like, you know, it lightens, but it's not going to lighten tomorrow. So I ended up meeting Shanna a couple weeks after her texting me. And we met in San Clemente for coffee and tears and just like sharing our parallels and our sadness. And when we left, she hugged me and she said, I'm sorry, we're friends. Wow. And I was like, oh, like that hurt. Like at first I was like, I can't believe you're sorry you're my friend. Like, you should be grateful that we're friends. But then I was like, oh no, I get it. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry too. Right. I'm sorry that anyone knows this type of pain, and it stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go somewhere with that. Yeah. Like, I am so sorry that I am meeting women in their 20s and their 30s and men in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s who had their husband, their spouse, their partner taken from them, who had their child taken from them, who had a sibling taken from them. It was like, all of a sudden, you're not just part of the widowhood community, but you're part of that huge grief community, and everyone has these stories to share with you. So, I knew I wanted to create a platform, and I knew I wanted to call it I'm Sorry We're Friends. And so I sat with that, because that was probably in December of 2019, and I didn't actually create I'm Sorry We're Friends until April of 2020. But in the interim, I started collecting resources, because one thing that I noticed was that I could not just go somewhere and find like a guideline, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Like there was no one. My mom, bless her heart, was like literally Googling, survivor checklist to do all the like spousal stuff that I had to do. I had coworkers getting me in touch with attorneys, decedent affairs, all these things where you're like, someone should be coming to me with all this. I can't even handle life. I can't even. And thankfully, I had so many friends who were there to help me walk through and navigate Kevin's celebration of life. But you're just inundated with so many things in this time where you literally like can barely verbalize. You can't verbalize. People would ask me, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know. I genuinely can't even tell you. Like, and actually, that's not true. I would say, which seems so evil now, I need Kevin back. Bring Kevin back to me. And then you would see this like despair on people's faces that now, like I'm saying, 17 months later, I'm like, oh, that was such a shit thing to say to someone. But in that moment,
you're the only one who could say that.
Well, in that moment, that's all you wanted. Like, that's all I wanted. Yeah. So I started I'm Sorry We're Friends to bridge the gap. I wanted people to be able to come to my page to get the resources they needed. I had checklists on there. I had I still do. I have book recommendations. I started looking for inspiration and quotes and helpful pages. And I just collected tons of stuff that I needed, that I felt like if I needed it, there are a million new widows every single year. So if I needed it and I was just one of those million, then there were going to be more people who needed that. Right. So very roundabout story. That's how I created I'm Sorry We're Friends.
It's so cool. That's what I was looking for, the actual reason behind it. That's cool that she whispered that to you. I mean, that's what I used to say when I had my stomach issues and I was seeing a doctor all the time. I would say, I hope I don't see you anytime soon. Right. But like I really enjoy seeing you, but I really hope I don't see you anytime soon. Right. So that's. And
I say that too. I say it's a tribe that's necessary for survival once you're in it. Like you said, it's something you wish upon no one. You wish it upon. You don't wish it upon your worst enemy. No one deserves to have such a loss, especially unexpected. But once you're in that tribe,
Yeah.
You need that. It's a beacon of light that you can't see for yourself in that moment.
Yeah, and it's remarkable because I dealt with loss at 16, and when you're a 16-year-old, you don't want help because you're a proud, growing kid. You think you're a man, you're not. And so there was no social media back then. So it would have been cool to have something like that back then. And now, even almost 20 years later, I'm still tapping into resources. So you mentioned a few people who you've met along the way who have been special to you, but how about since starting the group, people that you've met? Do you have anybody that you've kind of taken under your wing, or maybe some widows you've met who have taken you under theirs since then that
there's
stick
so
out?
many, and that's one thing that I feel like I've accumulated so many resources and so many helpful pages that when a new widow reaches out to me, I kind of gauge like what was their loss and who can I connect them to, because over time you meet widows whose husbands died by suicide, widows whose husbands died by terminal illness, all the heart attack, all these things. And I do think that there is something that just connects you on a deeper level when you have the death of your spouses is similar.
Yeah.
But with that being said, there are about 5 of us who have really, really connected on the Instagram pages. And one, Marie, whose Instagram handle is Empowered Through Grief. Her husband died of cancer. But she was one of the most influential widows that I found when I first created my account. We connected. She was actually running like an anxiety through grief program at the time. I took her program, and then we just became fast friends. And she introduced me to other widows in the community, Emily Bingham and Dana Frost, who all have accounts as well, whose husbands all died of cancer as well. And then another woman named Mira Simone, who has her handle, I think, is New Moon Mira. And they just have these pages that they're so raw and beautiful and tragic and authentic. And I think I gravitate towards that because I have always known that whatever I was going to go through, whatever this page was going to become, I was going to be my true self, and I was going to put myself out there for everyone else to see, And so these 5 women that we've created this group, and we check in with one another. We do Zoom calls and, just constantly messaging to see how one another are doing. And each one of them has a different kind of facet. Like Emily is huge into exercise, and she has like a whole grief component that has to do with exercise. And then, like I said, Maria has a lot of strength around empowering yourself after the loss of a partner or a spouse. And then Dana has created a book of stories, and I don't know if you ever saw that, but I had a book of stories made for Kevin, which is absolutely magical.
I thought that was it brought me to tears when you posted that, because those are the things that I've always wanted, like from my brother. But like to me, it's I don't know what it is, but it's too much for me sometimes to.
But that's okay.
I'll get there.
And my mom can't read the book yet.
Yeah, it's
Kevin's
tough.
mom went directly to it and like dove in, and then I'm in the middle.
I feel like my parents would be a coin flip. I don't know.
Right. But I always tell my mom, it is okay to feel like that. Right. I think that's a part of grief that we push away, those uncomfortable feelings. Like, I couldn't read this page because it would just be too hard. Okay, sit with that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
let it be hard.
It flow through you, and when you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready for 2 years, you're not ready for 2 years. And you might even be surprised. So a widow reached out to me. I'm going to be getting Kevin's ashes tattooed into my arm.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I didn't even know it was a thing until he died. And I was like, cool. Oh, this is a thing. Yeah, I'm all about it. But one of the widows I connect with, she was like, oh, no. Like, I can't even look at my husband's ashes. Like, I will fall apart on the floor. And I was like, okay.
All right.
Again, like I just said to you, sit with that.
Right.
And then, like, in a week from now, check in. And she emailed me, like, 3 weeks later, and she's like, I opened him. I actually felt so connected to him. after looking at them, like I was so terrified of what I thought it would be.
Yes.
And then she went in and she wants to do the same thing with the tattoo. And, you know, so you really don't know. And then even still, if you were to open a page, like I told my mom, you open a page and you fall apart. Okay.
Yeah,
then
come
you
back
fall
another
apart.
time.
But there are so many rad stories about Kevin in there that I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Because Kevin was a very private person. So some of these things he wouldn't even tell me when you come back from a ride, and like maybe he was going, like a friend was going through something. You'd be like, oh yeah, it was a good ride. Yeah. And then they are writing this story about this time with Kevin. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, you just said you just went on a ride.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
And it was that guy's best day of his.
Exactly. And I even feel like with Eric, I still have so many memories of your brother growing up that I feel like so many people would still be able to write, like to this day, about the things that they remember about him. And so that's the neat thing. After I posted about that book, I had friends who are widowed, like 10 years out, go and create books of their late husbands. So
that's awesome. And you were talking about the ashes. That's cool. I had heard about the tattooing being a possibility a while ago, so I'm looking into that too. I think a lot of people most people probably don't think about ashes of a loved one until it happens when someone passes away. But when you get them, there's a lot, and you could do a lot of things with them. I mean, I've had my brothers for almost 18 years. I have some with me usually on every trip I go on, and bring a little bit of him with me everywhere I go. So you know, you kind of work your way up to it. So that's awesome that you're doing that. What are you going to get tattooed? Do you know?
I do, and it's funny. So do you remember Tyson Tomoy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Tyson's a tattoo artist out in Vegas.
That's cool.
And Kevin's family have vacation homes out there. So I had connected with him, and actually it's been some time because I had this idea a while ago, and I asked Tyson if he'd be able to make it happen, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. And then life happened, and I just haven't even been able to talk to him. But we actually have a bench that's being made for Kevin right now, and I'm using the same quote, but it's a quote by John Muir, "The mountains are calling and I must go." So I'll do that on my arm with some mountains, and then I'm actually getting Kevin's fingerprint tattooed. It was his ring finger.
That's cool.
Up like kind of at the top of my wrist as like a moon.
Okay.
Kind of like guiding light following.
That is cool.
So, yeah. So there's a few other details that I'm thinking of adding or getting rid of. I don't know. But, yeah, that's where I'm at. So I got for his 1 year, his actual, like, signature tattooed into my ring finger.
That's cool.
Which is so nice because it's so fun to be able to, like, actually be able to visualize him, like, signing his name.
Such a husband thing.
Right. And I don't know that fun is the right word, but it's special to be able to see something like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's where we're at. And then poor Tyson, I like literally was like, okay, talk to you, and never talk to you again. So we'll figure it out
Tattoo
when
artists,
the time is right.
Tattoo artists are always there when you're ready.
And he's phenomenal. So yes.
And he's a long time, goes way back
as
well. That's one of my brother's first friends he met in high school. I remember. Kid looked like he was like Junior Seau when we were in high school. Like, you're 15? Like, oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, where do you want to go with the platform from here? Just to continue to grow, to create, like you said, a bigger community, or?
Yeah, it's really shifted and evolved since starting it a year ago. I feel that in the beginning, it was just me really like spewing out resources and helpful pages, and it's changed to be a space that I can normalize grief.
Right.
And I have now started just to purely put like my experiences out there, the thoughts that go on in my mind.
A lot of good quotes from you.
Yeah,
I've
thank
seen.
you.
And I'm
thank
like,
you.
And they're from you.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's powerful.
And I started kind of doing that here and there, and I noticed that was the thing that was getting the most likes, and then people would message me afterwards, and I was like, and they would say to me, I can't voice that.
Right.
I can't do that. I can't tell my family members that. I can't tell my friends that. And so I thought, if I feel comfortable to put that vulnerability out there, why not? So in that regard, I still have the resources. I still have the helpful pages. I'm always trying to promote other people within that community. Megan Devine is another one. Her book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, is what I call the Grief Bible. And I think it's a phenomenal book for both grievers and the griever support system.
Right.
But anyways, I'm always trying to promote in that regard, but for myself, now it's kind of shifted into this like evolution of how I want to be a part of that shift in society and our culture of normalizing what this looks like. That grief is not something that you get over, that you don't move on from someone's life. You move forward and it's with them. It's not without them. And then my dream at some point is to become a coach, a mentor, a cheerleader of sorts for other young widows, especially young widow mamas, because that is and widowers. The reason why I always go to widows is sadly, I don't have a lot of widowers reach out to me.
And a widower is a man who's lost his wife. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I should be defining that. But
I got to freshen up on the terminology sometimes myself.
But just a support system, because you lose a lot of your support system when people die. And like you said too, especially with your experience with your brother, I mean, he was a kid and kids don't know how to handle death
People
very
grow
well.
up and they move and then stuff happens in their lives.
Moving. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't expect and it's tough because I was really selfish in my feelings sometimes. I'm like, why isn't so-and-so reaching out to me? Why isn't this person?
Right.
And then you look at their life and they're dealing with their own shit. And they might not even realize what day it is, So it's like.
Yeah, there's a lot of secondary losses that come. And some of Kevin's really close friends are not there anymore. And I had to accept that. And I had to understand that, just like you said, some of these people struggle to handle their own emotions and what they're going through. And then Kevin's death was just another piece of that was all consuming to them, and they just did not know how to see me without dealing with their pain. And so over time I've been able to acknowledge, accept, let go of things like that. But especially when you're a young kid and like you're seeing your friends and your brother's friends not be able to be with you anymore, support you. You feel so isolated. It's tough.
And we're a little older now, but when you're younger and you deal with that and you get the phone calls from someone who might be drunk or wasted and they're like, I miss your brother so much. And it's like, well, how come I never see you?
Right.
How come we haven't done anything together ever, but you call me when you're wasted? Like those are the numbers I had to block. Those are the people I had to cut out and realize like,
they didn't know how to show up.
Damn, I've been dealing with this on my own, and I'm not supposed to be the one who's here for you, which I'm sure
but it happens so often, right?
But it happens. Yeah. And so me being the type of person I am and you having the big heart that you have, I'm sure you would be there for someone if they were like that. You would say, hey, you know what? Drink some water, chill out, call me tomorrow. But then you don't hear from that kind of person usually the next day. So those are the ones you just kind of they're gone. But like you said, the support system is huge, and you want to normalize grief, which is one of the biggest things that drew me to you and your page since you've lost Kevin. I'm 16 years old. I lose my brother. One of the first things someone said to me, and I won't name them, they are a very close family friend, sat me down and said, listen, you need to get over it. Looked me right in the eye and said, listen, you need to get over this and move on with your life, or else your life is going to be hell. And your brother wouldn't want your life to be hell. Yeah. This is a grown-ass man saying this to me at 16. I'm just like, okay, so I just got to get over it? Oh, fine, okay, yeah, I'm going to be over it tomorrow. And I'm just like, that was the narrative for most people. I mean, my mom wasn't like that, obviously. My family was very like, hey, this is okay. We're going to have to cry a bit and get over it. But that used to be the term, get over it, rub some dirt on it. Yeah. No, boys don't cry, all that stuff. So it's like, to now be in the year that we're in, the time that we're in, and to have normal people like you and me telling people it's okay to cry. It's okay to sit there for a week and miss someone. It could take a month. I really resonate with what you're doing. So
thank you.
I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's crazy because, we've both endured life-changing losses at different ages, different times of our lives. And I think it's hard for people to know how to be there or be part of a support system, like you said, after, a year goes by, maybe 2 years go by. For someone like us, a decade plus goes by. It's hard. It's hard to still be there for someone. So what would your advice be for people who are just looking to be part of a support system but don't really know what to do? What are the, the do's and don'ts that have kind of come across your plate in the last year and a half, 2 years of your life.
Yeah, and like you said, your support system is going to look a lot different day one than it is going to be year 1, year 10.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you are literally there to sit with, carry if you need, whatever it may be, someone's pain and anguish. Not to offer the platitudes, not to offer the get over it or the rest of your life is going to be horrible, or, God needed them more, et cetera, but literally to sit there and say, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
And like, you don't deserve this and no one else deserves this. And I am here to hold you. And I am here to hold space for you for as long as you need.
Right.
Because we as a society have this inclination to fix. It's too uncomfortable to watch people in pain. My mom and I had this conversation. Yeah. It was so hard for her to see me suffering. But I've told everyone, like, there was a time I needed to suffer. I really needed that. My brain needed that space to say, like, no, this is not okay. This is so unfair. And Kevin should be here. He was only 36 years old. We were in the prime of our lives. We had so many hopes. We had so many dreams. We had aspirations for what our future was going to look like. Yeah. We were headed towards baby number 2. Like, this is horrific. And the people, I think, that showed up for me the most were the people that were like, yep, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to love you through this. And then you have the other group of people, the doers, but the doers in the, shall I say, right way? I don't know that. Right and wrong is so hard when it comes to grief, but like, I had my friends create a Google sheet, and my mom, my sister, and 5 of my close friends spent the night with me for the first 4 months. Every single night someone was rotating. I had friends drop off a hot coffee in the morning, get a meal train going, a GoFundMe. That was so hard for me to accept a GoFundMe. I was like, no, we could do this. And I remember one of my dad's really good friends sat me down and he said, regardless if you can do this, you just lost the second income. This isn't just about you. This is about you and your child and your future. Yeah. Like, accept future that people want to help you in a monetary way because they feel like they can't help you any other way.
Right.
So there was that. And then I just feel like, again, friends and strangers connecting me to this community, connecting me to more widows, and just showing up in ways that I could not believe. And then I think as time goes on, and this is something probably you could speak to too, it becomes terrifying to think that people are forgetting about your person.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing.
Also, I think as an outsider, like before I lost Kevin, when I would see your parents say, because Kevin got to meet your parents one time at Islands, it was hard for me. It was uncomfortable for me to bring Eric up because at the time, not having been a griever, I was like, well, I don't want to reignite this sadness in them, which is very common. And even in the grief world, some people do want their loved ones spoken about and other people don't. Kevin's dad struggles with talking about Kevin right now. So I think that you kind of have to read your audience and know what they need. But for me, I do not want Kevin to be forgotten.
Right.
And so talking about him and memorializing him and honoring him and continuing on a legacy after year 1 has been huge. We have a memorial bench going up for him at Dank Mountain in La Costa. Cool. Yeah, and that's going up next weekend. And we just celebrated his birthday, and I had a night of family and then the next night of friends. People showing up or just checking in. I know another widow sister of mine, we were saying, like, we literally go home every night to ourselves and our children, and like, we miss the text messages of, hey, did you make it home safe? Right. Love you, thinking of you, whatever. We don't have that anymore. So to have friends and family that can do that, hey, you drove home from my house tonight. Did you make it home? Thinking of you. Have a good night's sleep. It's like all these little comforts that people don't think about you missing, that you miss.
Exactly.
It's the small details that I think become harder as time moves forward. But just remembering them, that's something, and bringing up their name and coming up like I've told your mom this too about how I think about Eric's laugh, his smile. Like I can still hear those things, but we so often don't say that to someone, and we should.
And yeah, my God, you are. Oh, that is so spot on, because all these years later, I mean, some of my brother's best friends, I don't know where they're at, what they're doing these days, and that's fine. You know, people grow up, they grow old, but the first few years afterwards, you would see that look on people's face when you run into them. They're happy to see you, but they're like, shit, they don't know what kind of day you're having.
Right.
They don't want to, you might've just cried in the parking lot. Who knows? They don't want to come up to you and say, hey,
Right.
I'm thinking about your dead brother, you know? So it's like, I got that. But at the same time, every time I'd see someone, I'd be like, please bring it up so I don't have to be the one who brings it up.
And it's okay.
You know, I'd like to hear a story about him that I've never heard,
Right.
or tell me something he did that pissed you off one time. It's like,
I have a couple of those about Eric too.
I'm like,
Yeah.
we're not at his funeral forever. Every time we run into each other, like it doesn't have to be like politically correct. You could say, hey, oh my God, I had a beer with your brother one time. I don't know if you ever knew that, you know, just like random stories. It's so cool
And
to
if
hear.
I cry because you told me a story, that's okay too.
Right.
It ignites emotion in us when we hear about special memories or just funny, silly things. Like you're going to have this spectrum of emotions run through you. And so if you did tell me a story that brings tears to my eyes, understand that you didn't remind me he's dead. I know he's dead. You reminded me of these special moments when he was living.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And the older I've gotten and the more I've gotten in touch with emotions and feelings and everything, that tears can mean a bunch of different things.
Oh
yeah. Like
absolutely.
some of the best moments in life are full of teary eyes. So, I mean, oh man. So like you said, you are doing what you can to keep Kevin's name alive.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a water bottle on
of this dripping
here.
all
So
over.
Kevin's last name and your last name, Lentz.
Yes.
So you turned it into did you coin Lentz's more, or
Nope.
was that his deal?
That was his.
Okay.
So Kevin was one to have a pun with words, and
good.
so he his handle was Lentz's more.
Okay. So
And
that
then
was
when
his Instagram
I got
name.
married, I was like,
Oh.
what am I going to change my name to? And then two of my girlfriends were like, Miss Lentz's more. And I'm like, okay, all right,
Okay.
we'll go with it.
That's how
so
it
yeah,
started.
so then so his handle was Lentz's more. And what happened after he was killed was that the Tasco, the apparel company, they wanted to do something in his honor, and so they created a whole line of sweaters and T-shirts, mountain bike gloves, water bottles, everything in his
awesome.
honor as a fundraiser to go to the family. So
That's so cool.
yeah, yep. So
So
we have
I'm-
a bunch of that.
I noticed, because to kind of wrap up here, I just want to talk about the ways that you are going to honor his name in the future, what your plans are for that. So the bench that's going in, you said that's, where is it in La Costa?
It's up. It's called Dank Mountain, and I'm sure most people have probably never heard of it called that. That's usually what mountain bikers call it. But it's if you're on San Elijo Road going into San Marcos, there's like a recycle center.
Okay.
And everyone parks there, and it's a hiking and biking
It's like a
trail.
giant uphill,
it's
right?
Yes, it's like
okay.
straight up mile and some change straight up. And I had wanted to put a bench in his honor actually at Lake Calaveras, and it just got too the legalities got too complicated. And so his friend Mark was like, I know someone in La Costa, and Kevin loved the trails there too. And the view is phenomenal. I actually can't believe it all worked out the way that it was supposed to in that regard. And so one of his riding buddies actually built the bench.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
it's stunning. So we'll go up there next week, and we'll actually all get the opportunity to like drill it in and put it in there. So yeah, that's one of the ways, and I think it's just simple things. I don't have anything that's just stand out. I had originally thought about creating like a foundation, and I have yet to move forward with that. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's just in the things that I do every day.
Yeah.
It's in the reminders, how he liked things done around the house, his cooking. He loved to cook. He loved to just be able to have a good beer or a good drink, and it's like things like that I just do on a daily basis to keep him here.
Yeah.
I don't have any grand ideas. The book was one of them. That book will follow Lawson, and it will follow, like, he can continue to move that however he wants to. Same thing with my wedding ring. my wedding ring was actually handed down to Kevin by his grandmother who had passed away, and we redesigned it, and then now it will become Lawson's, and Lawson will be able to do whatever he wants. So we're continuing, you know, those just kind of special things in our own family to honor him moving forward, but nothing wild and grand. And Kevin wasn't like that. Right. He was a very, very humble person. And I think that if he is even capable of seeing and experiencing what we've done so far, I think he'd be embarrassed because he just was, he didn't even like his birthday celebrated. And when he got first place in a race, it was like, kind of like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just in the day in and the day out. And, you know, trying to raise Lawson in ways that I know that Kevin would appreciate.
And I mean, obviously I can't speak for Kevin, but I can speak for humanity that I would think everyone would think you're doing a phenomenal job. Which is where I want to wrap up here with, I have experienced a life-changing loss at a young age. I wanted to disappear for a while, and I'm sure you can relate, but you didn't. So I just wanted to say how much I look up to you for being as transparent, as vulnerable, as strong as you've been, and sharing all your feelings and everything that you have, because coming from me, someone who's been grieving for 18 years, like you said, it doesn't go away. It has helped me out a lot following your journey. And that's hard to tell someone when they're going through something as horrible as you have, like, hey, I'm appreciating your journey. But I am appreciating it, and it's rubbing off on people of all walks of life. So I hope you know that.
Thank you.
And so,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So if there's anything you'd like to leave us with about your page or Kevin or anything, feel free. But I mean, I feel like we kind of covered everything today.
No, I think, just live day to day and embrace this present moment, and, you know, just love and honor the people around you. And that's what I would leave with, because one day everyone's going to become a memory.
Right.
And take the pictures and do the things. And, you know, even if they feel inconvenient to you at the time, be a part of it, because in an instant someone can be gone and that's all you have left.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this is Lauren Lentz. She's, I'm Sorry We're Friends on Instagram. Give her a check out. Give her a follow. Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, we're out.